Hello, and welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 124, where today, me and Ross are digging into Listencorp. And before we get into Listencorp and how cool it is, I always like to start these episodes with a little bit of my broken record spiel, Ross, where these are, to me, I love finding new music, checking it out, talking about it, talking to artists and stuff. But these are the episodes that I really, really like doing because I think this sort of magazines and like curating of like kind of the state of a community at the time. We've talked about this with like Visual Signals.
Yeah.
Other curators of kind of the vaporwave scene, Utopia District, and like how important and appreciated that work is for me. Like how much I love that somebody takes the time to do this. Like before we even really get into it and talk about it, I just like to open with that like, it's just such important curation work, even if maybe they don't think about it that way.
I agree. I do like seeing, other media about this kind of niche music, and it's heartening to see it. And it's also just very entertaining, very interesting to read on its own merits. It's just, weirdly enough, I like vaporwave and I like reading about vaporwave. So a magazine about vaporwave, you say, sign me up. So yeah. I am quite the fan. And yeah, I love seeing other people doing the kind of work that we're doing in the wild,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is Listencorp? Listencorp is, I would say, predominantly is thought of as a magazine. It's a vaporwave electronic music magazine, founded, largely edited, content created by Liam Murphy, who, if you want to dig more into them as a creator, they had a really nice about 90 plus minute podcast on Utopia District earlier this year. So that'll be a link to that in the show notes. So I think that'll be like a really in-depth talk with the creator. This episode is kind of more about like our experiences interacting with the magazine. So it's been going on for, I say a couple of years now, but really 2021, I think, is when they really started doing like proper prints. Yeah. But there's writing on the website. There's, a website also in the show notes that has like early album reviews that go back further than that.
Yeah, I think they started as a website and then like migrated to making actual Dead Tree media. Well, Dead Tree and also there's a digital version of the magazine as well. So.
Dead PDF, Dead Pixel.
That you buy on Etsy.
Yep.
There's no wrong distribution platform, I guess. It's just I haven't seen the e-magazine to Etsy pipeline before, but
Yeah. It's interesting. So personal experience with Listencore is I actually had heard of them, but wasn't super familiar with their writing or the magazine until late last year. The 6th issue released, which was all about Fruitige Aero and was sold as a magazine cassette bundle along with a reissue of A Possible Future 2008 from City Reviewer, which is a big Fruitige Aero themed compilation album of like all things of that aesthetic and that style of vaporwave. And that was pointed out to me by, I think actually 2 shout outs in a row. I think Sheldon Dream Suite was the one that pointed that out to me, and it sounded super interesting. So I picked up a copy and got the magazine, got the cassette, and loved both of them.
Nice. I had not heard of them before either, but you can actually get all 6 issues electronically for a very reasonable, I think like $6 or $7 on Etsy. So I got that and went through their entire back catalog for this issue or this episode.
What is it but an audio issue?
Yeah, that's true. And I was impressed with the work. But yeah, it's, part of the thing of vaporwave is how fragmented and scattered it is and how you really have to be alert and attentive to keep up with a lot of these things that have been around for a while. It's there's no central clearinghouse for vaporwave. The vaporwave subreddit failed me yet again.
Shocker. Maybe not the place to go.
Oh no.
Who knows? I've spoken of various qualities about that subreddit, social media in general. So what is included in a given issue? I guess we'll start off. And then, there are 6, which I also, like you, picked them up and read through all of them. So we can talk about specific articles that were of interest or anything else, obviously, you want to talk about. But broadly, I like the way like a general issue is structured. So there's usually like a long form interview with an artist. And then there's features that are shorter pieces, also typically on like an artist. There's album reviews. There's little fun magazine style inserts of like, oh, we sat down with, Data Girl or Desert Sand Feels Warm at Night or Christ or somebody and asked them these 5 questions. What's the first album you remember buying? Like those little kind of like.
Yeah, I do like those short, kind of easy to digest, fun little interviews. Yeah.
Yep. And then it has a few longer form album reviews and then maybe an article or two, like a topic article contributed by somebody. And then, throughout there's advertisements, there's beautiful like graphic design layout of people contributing artwork. Yeah, it's just, they're a breezy, fun little read. And, it's one of those things where, gosh, it'd be so cool. I know it's not feasible to do it every month. It'd be really cool if there was like a monthly, like old school magazine monthly release, but I get that it's more spaced out. But it is an awesome little snapshot of kind of the moment in time when it came out. Because like people will talk about like articles that came out or like albums. You're like, oh, yeah, that did come out then. Or like you'll see a name and you'll be like, oh, I've always seen that name, but wow, they've been around longer than I realized. That type of stuff. Like as somebody who still is getting a lot of education in like gaps of knowledge in the genre, it's really interesting to like fill it out. There's descriptions of concerts in some of them. There's discussions of like the one article we get into it later after we kind of do this general guideline is there's a really interesting like mid-journey article about like AI art.
Oh,
of like a very specific era of AI art. It's really interesting kind of in the way people talk about it now. There's stuff like that. There's concert descriptions, which I mentioned. Just really cool.
Yeah, no, like in the first issue, they have a little editorial message in the table of contents page and says, "Welcome to the first ever edition of Listencorp magazine. We are bringing our exploration of all kinds of electronic music into the world of print." So, we were referring to it as a vaporwave magazine, but it's technically not. It focuses on more than just vaporwave. So that should be noted. But yeah, it's got a broad sort of look at, I would say, like niche, non-popular electronic music, like, not just vaporwave, but, ambient and drone and glitch and like these kind of things that are not as like mainstream. So I think that's kind of the major focus is, again, shining a light on lesser known artists and albums. And, one question before we get into too specifics, how many albums did you listen to based on recommendations from this magazine?
Like since we
just while you were reviewing this, did you like I went through and like blah 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 this album by this artist? I'm like, okay, well, let me just look that up and listen to it while I'm reading the magazine. So I listened to like
a fair fraction of them, especially like ones that reviewed that I had not heard of at all. I think if it was stuff by artists I was familiar with, less so. But
yeah, I like at least 4 albums I listened to specifically because they were mentioned here. Yeah, so it's a great place if you're looking for recommendations, because they review a lot and talk. And even in their articles, like you talk about the Frutiger era, there are multiple albums listed in that article, and I listened to them to get more of a sense of what that term means. So yeah, it's really as a resource for finding new music to listen to. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of, to me, kind of the curation part of it. And then the quality writing is like, every one of the 6 articles has a main, like a big interview, like I said, with a big artist like Desert Sand Feels Warm at Night or Data Girl or Catcore or something like that. But that main article and pretty much, all 6 issues is like actually really interesting and worth reading alone. Like, again, one was the AI artwork. One was on Lost Media by Tales 155. Who I've seen on the Groceries Discord. There's a really nice piece about, lost films and other lost media. The one in...
Oh, yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, it was good. And then there's one on Vapor Memory, the famous YouTube channel that is probably everybody's gateway into like one of the major gateways into this genre. Again, a majorly like important curated effort that is done probably largely for free. I don't know. I don't think it's monetized. I don't know off the top of my head.
I mean, YouTube will add ads.
It's true.
I mean, YouTube will put ads on non-monetized channels too. Like
it's true. Oh no.
Yeah.
Probably running ads on us.
Yeah. Possibly. I mean, well, because we put samples of all their albums in, we'll be demonetized. But then,
they'll copyright. Like a lot of those vaporwave albums don't get hit by the Sentinels.
Yeah. But if they do get copyright hit, then they'll monetize it for the people who have the copyright. So
run 1,000 ads on it. Every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, ads aside, probably not their fault. Vapor Memory. God, I can't imagine not having checked them out. But if you haven't, you absolutely should. It's
if there's a secret saint holding up the pillars of vaporwave. It's vapor memory. Like
they're one of them for sure. They're up
best,
there.
most accurate name, moniker in the entire scene. Yeah.
Yeah, the fifth album or fifth issue. See, I reversed it. Like fifth issue has a really great article with an interview of people who worked on Wipeout about the creation of that game and its soundtrack. Mm-hmm. Fascinating reading. And then, of course, in the sixth issue, it's the person who coined the term Frutigerro and kind of did all the original research into what that is and what that means. Which we've also done a bunch of issues on. It's a fascinating era of graphic design. Mm-hmm. And aesthetics. So those articles alone are like worth the price of admission on top of, like you said, all the great album recommendations.
Yeah. One thing I do like in overall sense is how approachable the writing in this magazine is, because a lot of these sort of niche and fan publications and books tend to get too academic to be really approachable for a broad audience, I feel, because like, a lot of people who are writing, like they get their, have some postgraduate education, or they're just really into theory and this is obviously, a labor of love. So they just get sort of into that academic style of writing, and it makes it very hard but this is like written as like a mainstream magazine that's meant for a broad audience. It doesn't feel like an academic journal. I mean, and it's not. And I mean that in a complimentary sense, because the academic journal stuff is important, but like, it's also like, there's so much been written about the gatekeeping of academia and putting this behind the barrier. But this is like a broader sort of like funnel to get people into the scene or to get people interested in this kind of music. And I really appreciate that they don't get that dense and get that specific, with references and academic language. So, yeah.
Yeah, just well-written introductions or discussions of interesting subtopics in the field. Yeah. So those things I would love to contribute something, but I also know that I would never find the time to do it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know how they source articles. I'm inviting myself into their living room, which is somewhat rude. I apologize. I don't know. So what do you want to go from here? So that's generally what it is. It's very cool. You should check it out. I'm happy to talk about like specific thoughts I had reading art, like certain articles, certain pieces. You can discuss any bit of music that you discovered while reading it. I think this is pretty open forum. This is just a celebration of anything that gets you thinking about, which is primarily the goal of the work.
Yeah. Well, we should probably talk about some of the articles.
Yeah, and a little bit more detail, sure.
Yeah, like the issue 2, the AI generated artwork.
Yeah.
Which was written in 2021, which is a very different, like, boy, things have changed in a very short amount of time, because AI artwork in generative adversarial networks, as they call them in the article, are...
Yeah, it was a completely different technology and architecture of the way they did it. Yep.
Yeah. Because back then it was Google Dream, and it's so surreal and messy and its own unique art style. Like, and man, just as a snapshot of like things back in time, it's pretty good and pretty like as a way to reflect how quickly things have changed.
Yep. And it's like reading a travel guide written in like August 2001.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Not in a mean way, but like it's really fascinating, because I do think that there's like a real lost aspect of this sort of generative art that was quickly taken over by like, we did a whole Patreon bonus episode on this. It was like, quickly taken over by like capital interests. And you have to think about how you want to engage with like how they handle copywritten work, which is difficult. And like sort of all this rise of like issues of like generative slop. And there's actually like a little time like 2015 to 2019 where it was actually sort of like an interesting, fun, almost alternate medium. And that was like somewhat taken away to try to just reproduce stuff other people do so you don't have to pay them anymore. Yeah. And it's like it's only a few years ago, but to me, it's almost like a really interesting lost future type article at this point.
Exactly.
Of like, because I loved Google Deep Dream.
That's it.
That thing was so much fun to fuck around with. And just like throw in some picture and put like a bunch of weird, surreal shit on it. Like in 2015, you're sitting in your apartment in Boston, a little stoned, playing with that. It's fun. And now it's like you just see this slop everywhere on like every Medium blog post, and like, oh man, what a thing that was taken from us.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is it's not the technology itself, it's how it's being used. Like imagine an alternate future in which I mean, an alternate present in which this technology is used to create types of art that did not exist before, rather than as a way to cut down on labor costs. Like that's the real issue here is like, let's do something new instead of just like take money away from workers, which is the real motivation for all of this, or at least how the companies are using it. So and this is kind of like in 2021, people still thought, well, we could make art that didn't exist before. We could make something that couldn't exist anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And it's seeing these old, Google Deep Dream type images is not quite nostalgic, but a lost future to us.
Yeah. So it's almost like it was it was better when they weren't very good at making art.
Exactly.
We're in like an uncanny valley of like, oh, I know this is dog shit slop. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when there's that weird little surreal era of like, oh, the computer's trying.
Yeah.
And then somebody could take that and manipulate it or do something interesting with it or embrace that surreality. Like, that was interesting. And then now it's just 1,000 slop images of grandma's eating cake with peach cream and filming.
Yeah, just something to get likes on Facebook to scam ad money from Meta.
Yeah, it's truly a nightmare.
Truly a nightmare. I mean, in issue 3, though, there was the another really good article with you mentioned earlier, the lost media. And again, huge fan of lost media in general. It's a fascinating thing to look into, like what kind of lost media. I mean, we just talked about it recently with like the passions, how that's kind of lost media, even though there's an audience for it. But again, I just like this description of sort of meditation on this as an overall view and like how it ties into your own specific thing. Like the writer talks about, I was looking for this one car ad that I remember growing up and I couldn't find it. And now it's, it's out there somewhere, but will I ever see it again? I don't know.
And crowdsourcing that stuff and trying to tap into like, I don't know if the article goes into this as much, but like tap into like everybody's collective memory to try to figure something out. Cause I remember that happened on the Hot Takes Discord. I think maybe it was Lux Elite posted some screenshot from a horror movie or something. And I was like, I need to know what this movie is. I have no fucking clue. It doesn't come up on anything. And I think it took like months until someone came along and was like, oh yeah, it's this movie from the 80s. And so just this like weird collective pulling of all of our memories to try to preserve media.
Yeah. I mean, even in my own experience, I just had a sort of, I've done so many podcasts now that, and I've been doing it for so long that like a fan on the RPPR Discord is like, hey, you mentioned this thing once. Do you remember what it was called? And it was, like this technological thing I'd heard about like 10 years ago and I was like, oh yeah, I think it was this. I don't remember. And then like 3 weeks later, it just pops in my head, Pirate Box. You would flash a Wi-Fi router and it would become its own Wi-Fi network and you could upload files to it. And it was like a portable little BBS server on a Wi-Fi. And it's like Pirate Box. Like it's just, the nature of memory itself. When you think about lost media, you think about your own memory and how, do you really know anything? Do you really remember anything?
Yeah.
The answer is no, you don't. You just remember a memory. Of a memory. It's just Xerox effect all the way down. So that's cool. Very applicable to vaporwave too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to skip ahead a bit to one thing that was interesting to me, and I was reminded of rereading these for this episode. Is in the 6th issue, there's a briefish interview with Cat System Core, and it was promoting Blueberries coming out, and I feel bad now. Like going back to that episode we did, because I had read this and I think of like an anxiety of influence thing. Like some of it worked into my brain where some of the stuff I had said about the album that I had read here, and I should have cited this like as a source in that episode. I feel bad, namely that it does confirm that the Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons was one of the influential pieces for it, which it popped in my head because like I did legit have a friend in high school who was super into that. But I don't think that enough was actually enough to remember what Armagast is from. And I think there's a little bit of this also sitting in my brain, and I didn't realize that.
A mea culpa
on my accidental plagiarism in some sense. But the thing I'd forgotten about that I also could have mentioned in that episode is that there's a 2-parter, that there's also an Empire of Light, which is like the second half of this project. It's kind of described as being more dark ambient-y.
Yeah, we'll have to listen to it.
So I'm definitely going to keep my eyes open for that. So yeah, thank you for reminding me of what I already knew. I'm sorry I didn't cite you.
Yeah. Well, and it also provided additional insight into that album too, that it was Cat Core was approached by NASA to create music.
Yep.
And then he was also approached by a bookmaker to create a soundtrack for a children's book about space. And that the book fell apart, but the music remains. It's like, well, I guess it's an album now. I'm like, cool. So I'm glad. Yeah. Art has a lot of weird paths to creation, and
absolutely. But that's what we were saying in, our Japanese Zombie album. He's got to fund the good shit.
Yeah.
That came out of a potential NASA gig. So I just wish I remembered that I'd read this article back in November or December.
The listeners, my half was untainted because I had not read that article, but when we did that episode.
Yeah. So. Ross is free from sin.
Yeah.
It's entirely me. You can cancel me.
I am pure. Yes. I just now it's on the record, unless it gets forgotten, unless the list becomes lost media.
This becomes lost media, and then everybody remembers you as the shithead.
Oh no.
And I am the Chad.
Oh no.
I've already AI altered the article.
Mm-hmm.
So other big key article pieces in each one is 4. We kind of mentioned is the vapor memory sort of interview discussion. I don't really have a lot to add to that other than I said earlier that vapor memory is an important channel that everybody should check out.
I like that the article actually gets quotes from artists like Cat Core and Luxury Elite to talk about what they think of vapor memory. And, like if anyone deserves, some kudos and some praises, it's definitely vapor memory. Boy, they are just putting in the work. And thank God they are, because I know I don't know if I would be a vaporwave fan without vapor memory, because I'm pretty sure I got started on I found a couple albums on Bandcamp and listened to them, but like it was a lot of YouTube mixes that were hosted on vapor memory that really got me hooked.
Mixes are just like in the, picking random albums while I'm working or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very important stuff. So yeah, good stuff.
9 years they've been going on. I think they're coming up on like 10 years.
Yeah.
They would have at least been around like 2016, 2017 when I would have been working a lot in grad school and always picking up stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then the last sort of key article that we are, main article we haven't talked about is in issue 5 is about Wipeout, which was interesting because I'd never played Wipeout, although I had known of it. I've never played it.
Yeah, I've not played Wipeout either, but I'm not surprised that it, like a racing game, became the foundation of a music because, great composed music. And Tim Wright is the composer for Wipeout. And think about Outrun, it's the same thing, right? Like it's just,
I don't know if you went and listened to the soundtrack because Wipeout's come up a lot. I think it's obviously one of the reasons it's maybe focused in this article is that I think it's a pretty important soundtrack for a lot of people in terms of like PS1 era, like EDM, basically. In the style of music, because if you go and listen to that soundtrack, it's very club electronic. It is not like an Outrun music.
No, I'm just in sense of like a video game soundtrack becoming like the foundation of a genre of music, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I could see a comparison there. I'll have to listen to the Wipeout soundtrack. I'm sure I'll be like, oh yeah, I see it. But yeah, like that early 2000s video game music is certainly making a massive comeback, with breakcore mixes and jungle mixes all, everywhere that I can see. So it's, again, this is history that I'm not familiar with, and it's good to learn about it.
I'm actually surprised even in the late 90s because, it really was like 97, I think.
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s, yeah.
But it's been a long running, there's a lot of editions of it, but the one soundtrack I listened to was the Sega Saturn version. You talked about listening to music while you read. Yeah. Kind of get a feel for what it is. And yeah, boy, if I'd heard that at the right time, like when it came out, I probably would have really liked it because there's a lot of feeling overlap. Like my dumb 13-year-old brain or whatever would have overlapped it in with like the Mortal Kombat soundtrack at the time, which is also like another big introduction to like that sort of like EDM and trance and stuff, which is an album that I just listened to on repeat for most of 1995.
Mortal Kombat movie soundtrack and the just absolutely devastating to my
which is funny because I didn't end up as much as like a Breaks or Jungle Guy as you did, although it's somewhere down in my memory because when I hear people now do it well, I do like their albums, and I did like listening to this after the fact. And there's a bunch. There's like like I said, I just listened to the Sega Saturn version, but there's like the PS1 version. There's the N64 version, Wipeout 64.
So many versions.
So many versions, so many soundtracks. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, good stuff. And it's the kind of history that like is important to document. And I love it. So yeah,
me too.
Yeah. It's nice to have it in one location too,
Totally. And speaking of history to document, we skipped over the main article of the first issue, which I don't want to do because it's like a concert report of a large Latin America vaporwave concert.
Oh yeah.
That was like a 3-day online thing. Tons of huge names, wide range of music.
And they talked about there's some other like concerts or festivals that they talked about too, and some of the other issues.
Yeah, because we've talked about, the kind of the Mexican vaporwave scene, but there's also a huge South American vaporwave scene that's come up in passing a lot. We've talked about albums from either creators from those areas like Brazil and Argentina and stuff. Mm-hmm. But that would be an interesting topic episode to really dig into that global South vaporwave.
Oh, yeah. I hear about a lot of interesting stuff coming out of like Brazil. Like they have a huge number of gamers and vaporwave fans and electronic music fans, but it's like a different style because they have like, there's a documentary that I've bookmarked, but I haven't watched yet on YouTube about, I forgot the term is, but they would have like somebody, the consoles were more expensive for the average person to buy, but like, someone in the neighborhood would buy a video game console and then just like let people come over and you basically kind of like an arcade, but you'd be playing a Super Nintendo or a PlayStation or whatever. Mm-hmm. And also a lot of bootlegging and emulated stuff. And like, it's a different scene there because they have different kind of games would become popular and different kinds of albums would take off. So yeah, it's like I said, it's, something I've seen glimpses of, but I haven't really delved into, but that's definitely a really good topic idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one person would be really cool to do for that is Lost Traveler, who's out of Peru, who recently did a big stream show. Mm-hmm. I think it was called like Underground Space. I think it was called, but it was a big vaporwave electronic music show. Nice. For the stream. Yeah. Yeah. So that would be fun to feature. See if they have a release coming out soon or maybe even it'd be cool to do a show report would be an interesting episode topic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Just think out loud because the nice thing about these URL shows, which is kind of what they call them as opposed to IRL.
Yeah, that's clever. Yeah.
Yep. I like it. It's fun. Yeah. The URL and IRL component of a show they'll talk about is that you can experience them like asynchronously. Mm-hmm. It's cool if you show up and support chat. The stream and be there in time. And there's chat and like, maybe a thing is a charity, like Vapor Aid and stuff that tries to raise money for Gaza and other charities. So there's some value in experiencing it in the moment, but it's cool that you can go back and a lot of those artists will put their sets up on Bandcamp or put their visual sets up on YouTube. So it'd be cool to like go through and like relive like a URL show or at least part of it. Cause some of them are like 3 days long and 60 artists, but, I'm just brainstorming out loud for the people, making some sausage in front of the fans. Well, but it's just another example of being inspired to talk about something by Listencorp's work.
Yeah, yeah. And let us know in the comments or on our Discord if you have any thoughts on that. So, yeah.
All right. Hey, moral of the story, this type of work is important. It's really cool if you support it. It'll all be linked down in the show notes. So if you haven't already, maybe we're super late to the game, but if you haven't already, definitely go support them, read it, and keep an eye out for future releases. Thank you so much for listening. I think, inspired to check out new music we talked about. That's what our next episode is going to be. So next episode, we're going to be picking out 2 albums, doing our usual new music and shout outs. I have no idea what we're going to cover. I think Ross knows what he's going to cover, but he's not allowed to spoil it. Nope. I personally have no idea what I'm going to do. So I got to do the very tortuous work of listening to a lot of good music and figuring out what I want to talk about. It's absolutely the worst.
A burden.
A true burden.
Just remember, Burke's doing this for you, listeners. You better appreciate it.
I'm enjoying myself for your benefit. Never forget it.
Yeah.
But hey, if you like this episode, you like what we do, and you want to check out more of it, we have a Patreon, Night Clerk Radio at patreon.com. We got 50 some bonus episodes, a bunch of other bonus content. We got a cool Discord where people help keep me up to date on the news music. So that's cool. Otherwise, you can find us. Well, I want to say any social media. I used to say that, like that's my habit, but that's not true anymore. Just check us out on Blue Sky, Night Clerk Radio at bluesky.com, Ross Payton at bluesky.com. I don't have a personal Blue Sky. Maybe I should. I don't know. But I guess if you're into other things, there's a Facebook that never gets updated, and there's a Gmail that I check every so often.
We're on
I'm such
YouTube.
a professional at social media. Yeah, and YouTube. Maybe you're even on YouTube with us right now, you know? Mm-hmm. Who knows how you're consuming it? Only you do. However you do choose to check us out, just take a moment to like click a like or a subscribe. That's my call to action for y'all. It does help, even if it doesn't feel like it. It's interesting. You can really tell the difference when people even do a little bit of engagement. Mm-hmm. What else? You know, by the time this comes out, we will have passed 5 years of this, which is wild. Over 100,000 downloads at this point.
Hey.
So thanks so much for checking this out, for building this community, to the vaporwave artists for accepting us into your community. It's been really cool in the past, I don't know, year or two to really get to know some of the people we talk about. It's just great. And if you're out there, then you should also be doing your best to build a community, friends, enemies, frenemies, and maybe you can all sit around and read some Listencorp together.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time. Bye. Bye.